Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Thank you for joining me wherever you are joining me. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, but whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. And if you're joining me on the YouTube channel, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. For me, I look at yesterday's women's Elite Eight game, and I am excited. Contrary to popular belief, the women's game didn't just get good. Like, they've been this good. They've been this good. The only difference in the women's game is the parity, right? If we're talking about 10 years ago, Caitlin Clark goes to one of maybe 4 or 5 schools. And now you get a Caitlin Clark at Iowa, right? 10 years ago, Juju goes to one of 4 or 5 schools that is probably not USC, right? 10 years ago, Texas is probably not a thing. 10 years ago, NC State's not making a run. And so when we think about how the women's game has grown, it's not that the game is better, it's that the game is deeper. If you remember, there was a time where Gino Auriemma talked about the fact that people were saying that was the fact that his team was so dominant, was that good for women's college basketball? And his thing was, it's not our job to get worse, it's their job to get better, right? And so women's college basketball said, challenge accepted. And they have risen to the occasion. Notice I said all of that without ever even saying a word about South Carolina and their dominance in this time. The women's game is in a very great place. The women's game is in a very healthy place. But I think it's important that we all remember that this is the gig. When we're talking about women's sports and the women's sports landscape, that if we're going to say, hey, our goal is equality, right? Our goal is for the women's game to be treated the same way as the men, then we have to be able to hold the women to the same standards that we hold the men, right? So with that, I got some issues with the women's game and what I saw and what people said and how they comported themselves yesterday, right? Yesterday and 2 days ago, if we're being honest about it. Number one, and this is across the board, you can't just rely on talent to beat everybody. At some point, you have to be able to coach and make that talent do what's necessary to overcome adversity. I'm going to start here. I don't care about any of the articles that have come out. I don't care about any of the stories that have come out about Kim Mulkey and what she may or may not have done, what she stands for, how she comports herself. I don't really care about any of that stuff, right? I have long said that I believe that we need to, keep the main thing, and that we sometimes dig too much into the personal lives of these people instead of just judging them on the basketball or the football or the baseball or whatever it is that they've got going on. But, right, we should be able to criticize them on the hoops side of it. And here's what we have for Kim Mulkey. Kim Mulkey, in my opinion, and you can tell me that I'm wrong. You can tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. You can tell me that I am uninformed. You can tell me that I'm crazy. I'm willing to listen. But from what I have seen from Kim Mulkey in the years that I have been watching her teams play, when she has the undeniable talent advantage, she wins. When the talent is equal, she can go far, but she gets beat. And when the talent is not up to the level, she doesn't even compete. Like they don't even make a run, right? But to her credit, she's very much the John Calipari of the women's game. Somebody who is a fantastic recruiter, who knows how to get players, who knows how to get talent to come, and who empowers that talent to be who they are. But you're not going to sit here and tell me that Kim Mulkey is a can't miss X's and O's. She got out coached, and if we're being honest about it, she's been getting out coached this entire run. The difference is that her players have been able to bail her out because, like I said, when she has superior level talent, she does well, right? She's able to make it happen. Her players bailed her out last year, and they bailed her out this year, but they couldn't bail her out because the philosophical or the strategic mistakes that she made was with the players. Now, they talked about this on ESPN, so like because I don't come on right after the game or at halftime, I didn't have a chance to say it, but anybody with the sense could tell you, what it is. She had Haley Van Lith on the best player in college basketball, right? She had someone who's not necessarily known for her defensive prowess on the best player in college basketball. But not only did she do that, she did that, and she was still trying to give that player help. Here's what you do, right? If you want to know what I would do, because that's always the thing where you're going to criticize, what would you do? What's the solution? I actually posted it. I would have put Flauge, who is a bigger, longer, more athletic girl, on Caitlin Clark, and I would have told everybody else to stay home. If Caitlin Clark can score 70, 80 points in a game, then they're going to beat us. But I'm going to roll the dice that Caitlin Clark can't score 70 to 80 points by herself in this game with my best, most athletic, most dogged defender on her. Right? If she wants to make the living of pulling up for 40 and 50 foot 3-pointers, then cool. But guess what she would have had to do? She would have had to pull up for 40 and 50 foot 3-pointers because I would have had Flauge picking her up full court because we had such a decided advantage inside that Iowa could not stay with them. We're going to pump this ball inside all the time. LSU settled for way too many 3-pointers. Way too many. They were killing on the boards. Attack the basket, make them have to stop you, get them in foul trouble, make Caitlin Clark have to play defense and offense. Don't help out off anyone. Why? Because we won't shut Caitlin Clark down. We'll shut everybody else down. Nobody else is scoring today. Let's see Caitlin Clark score 70, but she didn't do that. She had Haley Van Lith, and quite honestly, Haley Van Lith was she was defeated. You could see it in her body language. She was demoralized. I'm sorry, but you can't be a high-profile, high-level player and get like that and not be criticized. She deserves criticism today as well because she was asked to do a job and she didn't continue to fight and claw and do whatever she could in that job. You could see it in her body language. And again, if y'all think I'm lying, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you watched that Tell me you watched that game and it looked like from the start to the end that she was fully locked in on shutting this girl down as best she can, because you cannot shut down phenomenal, like, transformational players. She did whatever she wanted all night, and she did it while not even shooting well. So if Haley Van Lith can get her to shoot that poorly from the field, what would a Flaugier have done? So LSU goes home, right? They go home, and then after the game, the press conferences is all about, the LSU press conference is all about defending the Bayou Barbie, whom I love, but a lot of people don't like, right? Because of whatever. They don't like her attitude. They don't like the way she's so boisterous. I don't care. I love all that. Just back it up. Just back it up. But here's the thing. She then started sounding like a victim. I haven't had, I think one of the quotes was that she hasn't enjoyed it since the championship. Well, you could have fooled me. She's been putting on a good show because she's endorsing a whole bunch of stuff. She's out here getting this bread. Hey, that's the gig. So can she be unhappy and put on a happy face and do all this? Of course she can. But that's the gig. We don't then now have to hear about it. Right? What I felt, I've been threatened, I've been sexualized. Well, I'm sorry. I remember when Sue Bird, and this is years and years ago, Sue Bird was on with a radio station, and she had made a bet with the radio station, I believe, that if she didn't do anything, that she would come in a bikini or something crazy like that. And this was before Sue Bird was out and living her truth as Sue Bird, right? That was the kind of sexualization that they were going through back then. They had to fight through it. Why? Because that's the gig. People are awful. Newsflash. People are awful. So if you want equality, equality is not in the positive. Equality is not in the we're going to invest in you and boost you up. That's not equality. That's the easy part. Equality is in the negative. Equality is in the criticism as much as it's in the praise. If we only give you praise and we never criticize you, then do we really find you equal, or are we saying, oh, we can't afford to criticize? It's that way for everybody. As a black man, I don't mind being criticized. I can separate criticism from racism. I'm intelligent. I can tell the difference from when you are saying something because you are just racist or you have racist tendencies versus when you say something and you're just being critical. I can tell you people are not that, you're not that slick. You're not that fly. When people make comments about Caitlin Clark, right, and what she's doing, I can tell if it's legitimate criticism or legitimate takes or if it's racist, right? When they say stuff like, oh, well, she's not that good. She's just been put in front. Well, clearly you might have a little bias against white women being put into a spotlight who are really good, right? Because she is really, really good. But if somebody legitimately says, hey, I love Caitlin Clark, but she's not in my top 5, and then they start listing names, guess what? That's not racist. That's not hate. That's just the truth as they see it based off of analysis that if you stop and wait a minute and look at it, you can go, okay, I see their point. Right? This is the gig. If we don't have an opportunity to put Caitlin Clark in her proper place, not just based off the numbers, but based off of her game and how her game would stack up versus the greats, then guess what? We can't show her equality. That's not fair to her, right? If somebody says, hey, you know what? Caitlin Clark is great, but I remember Shamika Holtzclaw. That's not a diss against Caitlin Clark. If someone says, hey, Caitlin Clark is great, but I remember Maya Moore, that's not a diss against Caitlin Clark. And why am I naming those names? I'm naming those names because those were bigger wing-like players. Hey, let's ask ourselves this question. Is Caitlin Clark, is she better than Breanna Stewart? Breanna Stewart is a 6'3", 6'4" version of Caitlin Clark. She just happened to go to a school where she plays with other really good players, and so she never had to score consistently 40 points in a game. She's never had to put the entire team on her back for an entire season, and so her stats aren't going to look the same. But guess who is having to do that? Juju Watkins. And so now Caitlin Clark has to be on the lookout for Juju Watkins if Juju decides she wants to stay 4 years. We also don't talk about the fact that Caitlin Clark would not be Caitlin Clark if it wasn't for the fact that Paige Beckers blew out her knees in back-to-back seasons. Someone put up a diagram, and I forget who it was, but shout out to them. If I see it, I will shout them out. But they put up a diagram showing that 2020 class coming out of high school. Paige Beckers was number 1, right? Beckers was number 1. The Bayou Barbie was number 3. Number 5 was Caitlin Clark. After their freshman year, nobody was talking about Caitlin Clark. Everybody was talking about Paige McBuckets. She had a name as a freshman. We were talking about her. She was going to change the game. She was Diana Taurasi, only longer. She was the next it girl. And then she blew her knee out, came back the next year and blew her knee out again. And for those next 2 years was the ascension of Caitlin Clark to what we saw now. Shout out to Caitlin Clark for seeing the lane, driving it, and scoring the basket. That's what you're supposed to do, right? That's what you're supposed to do if you are her. And she is her. I can't wait to watch her when she no longer has to put the entire team on her shoulders. But guess what she's going to need to do in order to vault up into my top 5? She's going to need to put the team on her shoulders and win a championship. But in my opinion, that's not going to happen. Why? I'll tell you why. Because for as depleted as UConn is, they have more people that put the ball in the cup than Iowa does. And if Paige Beckers has to go 40 for 40 with Caitlin Clark, she can do it. But nobody else on Iowa is going toe-to-toe with all of the girls that they have for UConn that's still left. This ain't even a real squad. This ain't even a real squad. They lost so many people. UConn won because they were better coached. And USC they were not running sets. They had several possessions where they didn't get the ball to Juju Watkins. She was doing whatever she wanted. It should have been a Caitlin Clark 40-point type of night for Juju Watkins. Instead, we're watching a whole bunch of other people shoot the ball and miss and all this other stuff. They never took advantage of the low numbers for UConn. They just let UConn play their game, and we saw the results. Kim Mulkey got out-coached. Gottlieb for USC got out-coached. They did a great job, but all year it was predicated on the stars on their team. It wasn't predicated on, hey, when we need a scheme to be put in place to succeed, here it is. It's foolproof. We've done it. We've articulated it to our players, and they are executing it to a T. They got out-coached. Why is Texas not in the championship game? They got out-coached. They got beat by a better team. You know who almost never gets out-coached? South Carolina. Excuse me. And why does South Carolina have the inside lane on winning another championship and having an undefeated season that nobody's talking about because all they're talking about is Caitlin Clark? Rightfully so. Why are they in this place? Because their head coach has convinced a bunch of talented young girls, right? Ladies who, like someone who was never a starter for South Carolina until this year, is about to be a top 5 pick in the WNBA draft. She convinced that girl to stay after transferring after her freshman year and coming off the bench for 2 years. She convinced her to stay until her senior year. Hey, wait till Leah Boston leaves. You're going to be the woman. And guess what? She's the woman. But she's not the woman while scoring 30 points a game or 28 points a game. She averages in the mid-teens. She's not out there grabbing 25 rebounds a game. She averages less than 10. Why? Because they have a team and they bought into the dynamic. How many times have you seen players transfer and the coach say, hey, we talked. We had a good conversation. When she comes here, she's with me for life. Even when she leaves. That's why these girls want to play with Dawn Staley. That's why they want to go there. And we can get into the reasoning why we're not talking about South Carolina more. But we all know the reason why we're not talking about South Carolina more. Because when was the last time we really romanticized a team that did not have a white person on it? When was the last time that we romanticized a team? I can tell you when it was. It was the Fab Five. And we didn't really romanticize them. Like in our neighborhoods, we romanticized them. But in culture, they were vilified. They were the villains. And what do they say about South Carolina anytime South Carolina is dominant? Oh, they play like thugs. Oh, those are men out there. They say stuff that they're trying to say it like they're being complimentary, but they know they're giving backhanded comments. That's why we don't hear a lot of conversation about South Carolina. If Haley Van Lith had transferred to South Carolina, we would have more talk about South Carolina. Even last year, right? Even last year with LSU, because there wasn't really that presence, who got a lot of the credit for what they did? Kim Mulkey did. It wasn't that the players got the credit on the court. Kim Mulkey got the credit, and then the players got notoriety for how they stood up for themselves, right? How they went to bat for who they were as people and how they were unapologetically black, not credit for and outspoken. Flau'jae got love not because she's a killer on the basketball court, but because she's a celebrity in the social media world and in the music world that happens to also be a high level basketball player. But she told you in no uncertain terms, yo, I'm in the gym every day getting them up. I'm a hooper. This is what I do, but it's not all I can do. How Flau'jae isn't the number one story in all of women's basketball, living essentially a double life and doing it at the highest level. We're not talking about Lil Romeo, who was rapping and then went to USC and sat the bench and never really played. We're not talking about Snoop's son, who went to UCLA, or Diddy's son, who went to UCLA and barely played, or even Deion Sanders Jr., who went to SMU and didn't really We're not talking about stars kids who have a spotlight on them because their fathers are stars. We're talking about somebody that walked into LSU with 1 million followers or close to 1 million followers. We're talking about somebody that was a household name before they ever hit the college ranks, because she went on America's Got Talent, showed out. She got a deal, a record deal. She's putting out mixtapes. She's putting out EPs. She's killing the game. She's a rapper, a legitimate rapper. She's got bars. She ain't no Fashion Nova model. Shout out to the Fashion Nova models. But she's doing it different. Like, she should be every time you get a chance to talk about women's game, you should be talking about Flower J. Johnson. She's doing this. She's probably got $1 million in the bank, and she's still out here working hard to be a college basketball player. Like, what are we talking about here? But we're not. And we're not talking about anybody on South Carolina. They are the number 1 overall seed, and we have barely talked about them. Why? Because they've been scooping people up all right. They had one scare in the semifinals of the SEC championship game where they had to hit I think it was the semifinals. It might have been SEC championship tournament. It was either the semifinals or the quarterfinals. I can't remember which, but they had one scare where they had to hit the miracle shot from the 3 that was designed perfectly because they decided they didn't want to, guard her. By the way, the Tennessee coach got fired because at Tennessee, it's not good enough to just make the NCAA tournament. You have to make the NCAA tournament and advance. That's equality. That's equality. The fact that Tennessee fired their head coach, who's had nothing but regular season success and been able to get into the NCAA tournament, but has not advanced past or to the Sweet 16, and they fired her. That is equality, because that's what happens to the men's coaches. So if you want to talk about where we are, the equality is not in the positive. The equality is in the negative. And until we start accepting that the equality is in the negative and embracing that these ladies, that these strong women of all colors, of all shapes, of all sizes, of all beauty levels, of all skill levels, they have to be able to endure the negative if they want to have the same positive as the men. That's what has to happen. You don't think JJ Redick felt the way at Duke when he was the most hated man in the world? He's playing for a franchise that is hated. He's playing for a school that is hated by everybody but the people who are in that school and the fans of that school. Every other school hates Duke. ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, it don't matter. And he is the best player in the world at that level. He was hated. You don't think he received death threats? He talked about the fact that, and this is way after the fact. This wasn't in the moment. He talked about the fact that how people talked about raping his little sister who was a kid. This is the gig. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying that this is what it should be, but there are horrible people out here. There are people who have horrible takes out here. There are people who don't mean you well out here. And that is the price you pay for the level of equality that you get, because the men have been going through this forever. I never played Division I sports. I played D2 sports. I played D3 sports. I've been called the nigger. I've been called the N-word. It is not out of, like, I'm nobody. And if I'm nobody being called racial slurs, what you think Caitlin Clark gonna get? What you think I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that that's the gig. And with great power, with great influence, with great money comes great responsibility. And if you're going to be getting these NIL deals that pay you millions of dollars as college athletes and treating you like professionals, then guess what? You got to get this work as well. You got to be ready for the criticism. You got to be ready for the hate. And you got to be ready for the awful. And we can't use mental health as a shield to keep us from having to take this stuff or giving reason why we give up or why we don't play to our fullest extent. I'm not saying anybody did that. I'm saying we can't do it because on the guy's side, we kill him for it. Like right now, Ben Simmons is public enemy number one. Why? Because we really believe he's soft, that he doesn't really want to play sports, and he's using mental health as a scapegoat. We don't know for real. We're just out here assuming. But they gave the man $100 million. He hasn't played any basketball. People are tight. Right? People are tight. This is the gig. This is what you deal with. Right? So if Paige Beckers doesn't get hurt, she's probably the golden child right now. Hell, she may still end up being the golden child. Now, somebody, I forget who it was, I think maybe it was Shamika Hostlaw, who said that Paige Beckers had a better overall game than Caitlin Clark. I don't know if I agree, right? I don't know if I agree. I think Caitlin Clark might be a better rebounder than Beckers is. I think Caitlin Clark is a phenomenal passer, the same as Beckers. I think Beckers might be a little smoother in the way in which she operates than Caitlin Clark, but Caitlin Clark's a dead red killer. But I like that argument, right? Because that is an argument that somebody can say, and what are you going to do? You're going to say Shamika Hostlaw, one of the all-time greats, is hating because she likes Paige Beckers' game better than Caitlin Clark's game? No. You say respect. I either agree or I don't. That's it. And that's what we do in the barbershop conversations about men, right? About the men's players. We do that in the barbershop conversations in all sports. And if you want to be looked at as equal, this is the gig. This is what you got to deal with. And in the barbershop, we're going to talk. And let me tell you, in the barbershop, it is split. Everybody believes that Caitlin Clark is her. But not everybody is with this whole greatest basketball player of all time. I can tell you I'm not. I don't actually know a lot of people who do. I do know a few who thinks that she's the greatest of all time. And then when we talk about, well, what makes her the greatest, they can point to the metrics, right? They can point to the points and the rebounds and the, right? They could point to all of the numbers. I can't point to the numbers. I have to point to the qualitative information that I have. They point to the hard data, the quantitative information. I point to the qualitative. And I say, nah, fam, not going to be able to do it. It doesn't mean that I'm hating Caitlin Clark. It just means that I have a difference of opinion. And that, my friends, is equality. That's where it is. That's where it lies at. Right? When we can separate hate or racism or sexism or any ism or any phobia, when we can separate that from good old-fashioned, this is just what I believe based off what I've seen. That's where we get the true equality. It was a fantastic weekend in basketball. overall. I still contend, ladies and gentlemen, y'all were wrong. Outside of the 2 games last night, the women's tournament has not been better than the men's tournament. I talked about it on the Zebra Strikes podcast. It has not been better. The men's basketball tournament has had more parity. It's had more upsets. It's had more like down to the wire games. The women's, it just got good at the Elite Eight because, and I said that it would get good here because now anybody can win. But before that, it was just chalk on chalk on chalk, a little upset here, but nothing crazy. From the moment the men's tournament started, you had upsets. From the moment it started, you had upsets. Kentucky out, first round. Right? Kansas almost getting beat by Samford. Like, you had this stuff going on right out the gate. And every single day there was another, oh my gosh, the men's game was better. The star power for the men's game is not good. But the games themselves, the games were better. The stars were not better. The games were better. But shout out to the women's. I mean, I'll be tuned in. I know the rest of y'all are going to be tuned in. We're going to see how it goes from here. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Talk Spicy. We do this thing a few times a week. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, but whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. And if you're joining me on the YouTube channel, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Till next time, peace.